Steph Curry, as we all know, the best shooter to ever grace the game of basketball. He's changed the game, but he didn't only just change the game, right? He transformed it. And he also changed what success can look like for an athlete on and off the court, right? But on the court, we know him as the 4-time NBA champion, right? The 2-time MVP award winner, the all-time three-point leader with over 4,000 made threes. That's insane, right? I considered myself a shooter back in the day, but obviously Steph Curry is just an anomaly, right? But what truly inspires me about Steph is what he does off the court, beyond the court, right? And I'm talking about, feeding millions of kids through an organization he started with his wife, Aisha, called Eat, Learn, Play, where he builds schools, invests in literacy programs. He's launching businesses. And now, he just recently partnered with Google, which is a $2.5 trillion company, to bring AI insights to athletes around the world. That's crazy, right? It's remarkable. This is what this podcast is all about, right? It's more than a game. It just isn't a title. It's a challenge. It's a vision, okay? And that's going to be what I carry through, these episodes. If you decide to, stick around and listen to your boy, right? At some point, the final buzzer will sound. And this is for you young hoopers out there, right? The final buzzer will sound. You're going to have to hang up the jersey someday. And the question is, what will you do next? I don't care if you stop playing today, tomorrow, or if you have a Hall of Fame career in the NBA. At some point, you will have to hang up the jersey, okay? So whether it's yourself or if you know someone chasing their dream, please share this episode with them, okay? I don't really care about the views, right? If I have one consistent viewer, I'm going to do this every week. But I do think that there are many lessons to be learned through the game, right? And we're fortunate to be able to play this game that we love and go through these trials and tribulations, to go through the adversity. But we also get the opportunity to learn and grow through this game. It's a beautiful thing. It's a very beautiful thing, okay? So if you don't know my name is Jalen. Man, my story started like many of yours, right? It started at a very, very young age, okay? My mom played, through college. She coached through most of her life. My dad, while he didn't play through college, he played a big part in my player development, right? He coached me for a little bit, but he played a big part in my training and getting me to that next level. And just really, I was born into the game, right? I fell in love with the game very early on. Okay, I played through high school. I even started at the Division I level for a little bit, until I started battling some injuries and some other stuff, right? But I was fortunate to go play Division I basketball at the United States Military Academy at West Point, right? And that's another topic in itself, okay? But I played a lot of ball. I played against some amazing players. I played with some amazing players, right? I've seen a lot of things, okay? But what I think the young generation of hoopers forget to understand is that there are injuries, there are life circumstances. Eventually, right, you will have to make a choice to keep chasing basketball or accept that the game was bigger than your playing career. And that's not a bad thing to say, right? It's just always going to be more than just a game, okay? Like I said, you can have the best career, the most fulfilling career, but at the end of the day, are you going to be defined by the game, or are you going to use the game to help define who you are as a person? Ultimately, right, I walked away from the court. I walked away from the game. And for a while, I was lost. I got depressed. It took a huge, it took a lot of time to find myself again. Because again, right, I spent all my days with the game, whether it was practice, whether it was training on my own, traveling, expending resources, thankful for my mom and dad for pouring into that, right? But basketball was my life. It was my identity, okay? And so I went through a lot, right? I tried to figure out who I was without the game, and it was a tough thing to do, okay? But through faith, through family, and a lot of reflection and rebuilding, right? I found my purpose again, right? And now what I want is this podcast to be used by, players, parents, even coaches, right? To see the bigger picture on and off the court. Okay. So I want to drop, an episode every week. I'm thinking about doing it Tuesdays or Wednesdays early in the morning. So if you're commuting to work, you can listen to this, or you can watch it on YouTube, or you can just, watch it throughout the day, whatever works, right? But as long as I have one person who finds value in what I'm saying, then I don't mind doing this, you know. I think that is my purpose now. Okay. So yeah, so welcome to the podcast. It's more than a game, powered by my company Elite Fit Connect. And we'll get into what is that later, but I really appreciate if you're watching this, if you're listening to this now, I really appreciate you. Believe it. That does not go without notice. Okay. First thing, as we get into the topic of today's discussion, I want you to understand, and mind you, I have notes, right? Have a script, but I'm gonna go on tangents, right? Like right now, I'm about to go on a tangent, right? If you know me, you know I'm a very introverted dude. So just, getting the confidence to do a podcast, it took a lot. But I had a really good friend of mine the other day tell me that, at least from his perspective, he thinks that I have a lot to say and that people will listen. Okay. And I've always gone back and forth of wanting to do a podcast, right? I started a TikTok late last year, and I found a lot of value in that. I'm just seeing, young kids and hoopers interact. Like, I don't have a big following at all, but just, the few kids and people that reach out to me, DM or comment, I feel purposeful in doing that. So back to the point, right? If you know me, like, I am innately a quiet person. I stay to myself. I stay inside for the most part. But if you knew me on the court, you'd understand that I'm a completely different person, right? On the court, I like to consider myself a dog. Like, I was a dog. And while I would always let my game talk for itself, as soon as someone said one thing, it was over. I was talking that talk. I was talking that mess. But, I had a game to back it up. But there's a time when, I played on Texas Ambassadors, and my team it was full of white kids, right? We were solid. We were good. We were great. It was a great team. But I was one of two black kids on that team, right? All the parents thought I was the sweetest kid. I was respectful, and I was respectful, but like, I was quiet, right? And it would get to a point where in the games, they thought that the other team, was picking on me and, just going after me, right? And they're like, "Oh, why are they so hard on Jalen? Why do they pick on him?" Little did they know is that I was the one chirping. I was the one talking, getting under their skin, because as soon as they say something, like I said, it was over, right? Man, I've had, players from the other team get kicked out the gym. I've had them try and swing on me. Man, I have story after story. It could be a little overwhelming, honestly, but needless to say, like, I'm a different person on the court than off the court. Okay. Another quick story, right? I was at a wedding the other day. Actually, a co-founder of my company, Elite Fit Connect, he just got married, and I guess someone there, right? I guess he peeped my TikTok, right? And so he asked about it, and we started talking about some topics. But as soon as he brought it up, man, I was yapping away, because I'm just passionate about this stuff. And if it's something that I'm passionate about, I have no problem with just diving deep into it, right? And going headfirst into it, because I just love it. I love the game. I love leadership. I love mentorship. And if there's anything that I can do to give back to the game, I'm going to do it, right? And this is just a way for me to do it. All that to say, right? Everything starts with your identity, okay? And like I mentioned, right, basketball was a huge part of my identity, okay? But the real question is, who are you when the scoreboard isn't telling you who you are? Okay, when you hang up, the jersey, when you throw away the old sneakers, when you get off the court, right? Who are you truly? Okay. Steph Curry, we know him, right? Came from Davidson. He weighed about 180 pounds, small school, but he played like he belonged on the biggest stage, right? That's why he became so successful. Okay. His Elite Eight run was just remarkable back in 2008, upset after upset, right? And soon people realized that this kid, yeah, he might be small, but his game is big. Best believe his game was big. And then fast forward, right? You have people like LeBron James, Steve Kerr, great shooters like Reggie Miller and Ray Allen, all calling him the greatest shooter of all time. And it started with his mindset, his identity, okay? But long before those records that were broken, Steph had to believe that he was more than anything that the doubters said or anything that the ranking polls, ranked him at. He was way more than any of the noise, right? And that's a big, big step in really finding who you are as a person, right? So for me, okay, I was fortunate to go play at West Point, right? Basketball was my whole identity. And when it ended, I felt like I ended, right? The very, very, I guess, deep way to say it, but um, I was lost, right? And it's real, right? Like I'm not the only one that goes through this. Like you can see this in the media with even NBA players who stop playing, right? They go through depression. They go through things because their identity was just so tied to the game that once it all ended, what else was left? Okay. So what are some things that, we can do to kind of overcome that, right? And I think the first thing is that you have to understand that identity isn't your role. Okay. Identity is fluid. It can change over time, right? Like for me, I played basketball for however long. I had to figure out who I was outside of the game. Okay. And, fortunately, I made it through the tunnel, right? Thankful to my wife right now because she was there in a very dark time in my life. Sade, I love you very much. And I probably don't tell her this, enough, but she brought me out of a ditch that I didn't even realize I was in, right? And now we have two beautiful kids, have a great job and have the opportunity to do this, right? So understand that your identity isn't your role, okay? The next thing is that character will always outlast your performance. I don't care how successful you are in the game, but if you're just a bad person, no one's really going to care. And you can see that through today's athletics, through today's sports, professional sports, right? We could talk about players who were great at what they did on the court or on the field, but everything off the court or off the field, all that noise defined who they were as a person. And if it was negative or bad, then they were going to be depicted as a negative or bad person, right? So your character means everything. It means everything, okay? The next thing is you absolutely have to believe in who you are becoming and not just who you are now. And I get it, right? As a young player, as a young athlete, it's really hard to kind of think like that, right? To think about who you're going to become. But I truly believe that if you start, kind of game planning on where you want to be in life, whether it's with the sport or without, you can really define your path. Yes, there might be hurdles that you have to jump over, or you might have to take another route, to get to your ultimate goal. But at the end of the day, right, you can still kind of set the standards and set your expectations to getting to where you want to get to, right? And that's the great thing about, sports, right? You have a long journey ahead of you. There's a process that you're going to go through. You can define yourself along the way, right? But at the end of the day, you know that the game isn't going to define you, but you're going to use the game to help you become the person that you want to be, right? And that's the beautiful thing about the game of basketball and just sports in general, right? So for those of you listening right now, especially if you're a young athlete, I want you to take 30 seconds today, write down three things about yourself that have nothing to do with basketball. Okay? I want you to do that. And if you're feeling vulnerable, if you're on social media, post it. Feel free to tag me, tag elitefitconnect, or if you follow me on TikTok, just tag me, and because I'd love to see it, right? I would love to see it, and I'll respond. And I think that's just a good exercise to do as a young athlete, right? Because at the end of the day, it's more than a game, right? It is more than a game, okay? Identity, yes. Okay, we talked about identity. We understand that identity points the way, but process builds the path, which leads to your legacy, okay? And I vouch, or I talk about this all the time, right? Like, you have to love the process, especially when it comes to sports. In the game of basketball, right? You're not going to see success right away, okay? I remember I used to play at a middle school, Pflugerville Middle School, 7th grade, man. And let me tell you, if we had stuck together through high school, boy, we would have been filthy. But I decided to go to another school my 8th grade year, and we didn't win a single game that year. We didn't win a single game. Let me tell you, I wanted to quit so bad. I was like, I'm done with basketball. Okay. I was in band. I was a band nerd too. So I was like, I can just do music for the rest of my life, right? Forget basketball. This does not feel good. Losing sucks. But fortunately, I love the game enough to endure that process. Okay. I didn't let that terrible season that I went through define who I was and who I was within the game of basketball. Steph Curry, right? He didn't wake up one day as the all time 3-point king. He was doubted his whole life. He was small, okay? But it was the work that he put in that made him who he is today, right? It was the daily reps, it was the early morning workouts. He set standards, okay? It wasn't about the goal. Yes, your goal is important. You need to set, those benchmarks, have that goal, right? But it's all about the standards, because without standards, your goals don't mean anything, okay? And now we can look at Steph Curry today with his partnership with Google. Again, a $2.5 trillion company, where he's using AI to analyze shot quality, track performance, and teach the next generation how to train smarter. That's awesome. That's remarkable, right? He keeps trusting the process, and that's something that we can take away from that, right? Even after 4 rings, 1,000 threes, right? It's all about the process, and you just have to love the process. Love the process, okay? When basketball ended for me, as I mentioned, right, I had to build my own process, right? Through faith, through my marriage, through my kids, and through my career, right? I learned that consistency will always beat intensity. Okay. Just those small daily actions are going to create the biggest changes in your life, right? And so we talk about basketball, right? You're not going to get better if you're not in the gym every day, if you're not in the lab working on your craft, working on the details of your game, right? You're just not going to get better. Okay. You can go to the gym one day and have the best workout of your life, but if you don't work out those next few days, right, all that's going to be a waste, and no one's going to remember that, right? You have to be in the lab every day, whether it's on the court or whether it's in the classroom or whether it's, getting that promotion or building relationships, right? It takes work. Life is not easy. And I think a lot of us athletes, who have gone through it, we forget that it takes time. It's a process to get to where you want to be. We're just so used to being involved with the sport every single day for year after years after years, right? That it just becomes a natural thing for us to play. And, we work out and stuff, but we don't really think about the time and the effort that we actually put into the game to get to where we got to. Okay. You have to apply that to other aspects of your life. Like I said, your relationships, your faith, your career, everything, right? It's very translatable. And again, this is exactly why this podcast is called It's More Than a Game. Okay. Consistency is going to beat intensity. All right. And then when it comes to loving the process, there are some takeaways that we can talk about, right? And first and foremost is your standards are more important than your goals. And I mentioned this, right? If you don't have the right standards, if you don't set those expectations for yourself, those goals do not matter. And you're just not going to reach those goals, right? Set those standards. Be ahead of the game, set those standards and expectations. So that way your journey can just be that much easier. It's not going to be easy, but it's not going to be as difficult if you're just doing it on the fly, right? The next thing is consistency beats intensity. Like I mentioned, right? You got to put in the work. You absolutely have to put in the work. The last thing is, if you're into like finances or like investing, right? You understand the concept of compounding interest, okay? Let's say you open a brokerage account, right? You put in $50 a month in your brokerage account. And let's say you invest in like, some ETFs, so that you invest in the S&P. Okay. We know the S&P historically, it's always rising up. Okay. You put in $50 every month, all that's going to compound, right? You're going to accrue all this compounding interest, and then your gains are going to really be good. And you're going to get most gains, years from now, right? You might not see it right away, but in 10, 20 years from now, you're going to see that $50 a month, it grew a lot, right? So that's what I mean when I say process compounds over time, right? So if you put in the work daily, same amount of work, even on the days you don't want to work out or get in the gym, right? It's all going to be worth it in the end. And it's just all going to build on itself. It's going to compound and you're going to reap the benefits at the end of the day. Okay. If you have a teammate, grinding right now, if it's you that's grinding right now, if you have children, whoever it may be, let them know that process matters and help them understand that it's okay to go through things. It's okay to go through adversity, but you just got to love the process. Process is going to build success. I promise you, right? But the next thing is purpose will build your legacy. Okay. And this is where I think my story kind of comes in full circle. But first, let's talk about Steph Curry, right? I mentioned he has a foundation called Eat, Learn, Play, which has given 25 million meals to kids. He's built schools and has invested over $75 million doll hairs in literacy programs. Okay. That's awesome. Okay. That's just awesome. Okay. He shows us that the game can give back, right? He's still playing. He's still one of the best players in the league right now. He's still the best shooter to ever play the game. But he's not letting the game define who he is. He's using the game to build who he is, right? Which he's done very well. But the game isn't defining who he is, okay? Now, when I left the game, I thought my impact was over, as I mentioned. But I quickly realized I can still change lives, just in a different way, right? Like I'm not on the court breaking ankles, shooting threes, doing whatever, talking smack, mess, whatever. But I can do what I want to do without the game of basketball, without being on the court, without playing, right? Big reason why I built my company, Elite Fit Connect, okay? And what Elite Fit Connect is, it's a digital platform really to free coaches from scheduling, payments, and admin headaches, right? I want to help players access real development and not just politics or money grabs, right? Especially, we see the chaos that NIL has brought, right? I'm all for, I stand on it. I'm all for players getting paid. But what we forget to understand is that there are some terrible people in this world, right? And when we look at the game of basketball, when we look at the AAU circuit, EYBL, all these, programs and stuff and schools, right? There are a lot of coaches and trainers who are in it for the wrong reason. And they want to make a buck off these kids. They want to build their own brand. And they really, at least I think, they don't really care about player development. Okay. So Elite Fit Connect, what we're trying to do is sit in the middle of all of that. Okay. Sit in the middle of all of that, create an environment, a safe environment for kids to really grow in the game, right? And give opportunities for coaches and trainers who actually care about player development with tools to streamline their back office operations so they can spend more time on the court. Okay. At the end of the day, I'm trying to restore integrity in youth sports. Youth sports is a multi-billion-dollar thing now, whatever you want to call it. And that's crazy to me, right? That is crazy to me. It should be fun, right? Yes, we have our goals and stuff, but now it's turned into such a business, unfortunately, that we have to really be smart in where we put our kids, who we allow to coach and train our kids, because like I said, there are a lot of people in this world who just want to leech off someone else's success. Okay. So I really think that the future of sports in general, but more specifically basketball training, player development, is in AI tools. It's in this, evolving technology that I do think sports is lacking, is behind, right? Now, professional sports, that's a different story, right? They have the money, they have the funds, the investments, right? But at the youth level and even collegiate, right? More times than not, we don't have the right resources. Okay. So what if I could create something that could really, really help out that landscape? Okay. And I'm talking about AI tools for trainers that, like I said, speed up their back office operations, player analytics to help players really improve, backed by data, and then systems that will give time back to coaches and opportunities back to kids. That's the future in what I see. That's the legacy that I want for myself, right? To give back to the game, to provide opportunities for the younger generation of hoopers. I'm very big, if you've ever watched my TikTok, like I'm very big on providing like actionable steps, especially for the young generation of hoopers. Like we can theorize all day. We can talk about concepts. We can talk about, players, and which I would like to, absolutely, but I want this to be especially impactful for people involved in the game. Okay. So with that, I want to introduce the following steps, right? So number one is 3 circles, right? Understand who you are, understand what basketball might say who you are, and then understand who you are becoming, right? And that, I think that just will give you a perspective on your own personal journey through the game or whatever you're going through in life. And you can kind of get in front or get ahead of the game defining you. So you can use the game or whatever you're going through, the process, to help, you know, determine who you'll be. Use the game for your benefit. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Don't let the game define you. You define yourself through your experience. Okay. The next thing is setting a 7-day standards, right? And this is in order to, set those habits that we talked about. I think you got to track your habits, track your daily habits, okay? Whether it's eating right, whether it's getting in the gym, whether it's doing some mindfulness, some meditation, some praying, whatever it looks like. Go read, right? Build those habits, those winning habits that translate to not just on the court, but everything else off the court, okay? I want you to build a well-rounded life, okay? You can become the best player in the world, but if everything else in your life sucks, you're going to be a sad person when it all ends. I promise you. You're going to be a very sad person. All right. The next thing is what I call service play, right? And that's just having a serving mind, right? So think about one thing that you can do to give back this week, okay? It doesn't even have to be about basketball or sports, right? What is one way that you can give back this week and make an impact on someone else's life? Okay. I think if you do those 3 things, right? So the 3 circles, 7-day standards, and service play, I think that's going to help tremendously. And what I'm going to do is if you if you're vulnerable enough and you want to post what you're doing through these actionable steps, what are the results, right? If you post that, if you tag me, or if you just DM me and let me know, we can highlight that in future episodes, right? This should be collaborative. I want you guys involved. I don't want to just, I mean, it's just me right now, so I am talking, right? But I want to build off of your comments, off of your thoughts, right? So this just can be an engaging experience for everyone, all right? And I do plan on having guests. I don't even want to use the word guest, but I do want to have some co-hosts, right? But I do want to make sure that these people who join this podcast are aligned with my vision and understand the purpose of it's more than a game. Okay. So stay tuned for all that. How much time do we have? We are at, I don't even know, 30 minutes. And, I think that's a good, for a first episode, that's pretty good, right? I think it's not bad. I want to aim for 45 minutes to an hour, but again, a lot of this is going to be based off of your feedback, right? I have a schedule, I have topics that I want to discuss, but at the end of the day, whatever you guys want to talk about, that's what we're going to talk about. Okay. We can get into player, you know, analysis, right? We can talk about player archetypes. We can talk about the league, NBA and WNBA, because I think the WNBA is amazing right now. Talk about college basketball. We can even talk about high school basketball. I don't care. I really don't care. Anything and everything basketball related, but it's always going to be tied back to it's more than a game. And I'm going to do my best to give you some actionable steps that you can follow if you're a young player trying to get to that next level, right? Because that's the goal, right? We want to get to that next level, right? We want to use the game to our advantage. Doesn't matter if we play for 20 years, 10 years, or we stop playing right now. Okay. To close it out, um, you're not behind. Okay. Again, if you're a young basketball player, if you think you're behind, you're not behind. You're early. Okay. Trust the process. It's going to be a grind. You're going to go through failures, right? But don't let those failures define you. Okay. Steph Curry has shown us that the game can build businesses, can build families, it can build communities, right? can even build futures. And that's the beautiful thing about the game of basketball that I love so much, right? If you're watching this or listening to this today, I appreciate you wholeheartedly. I appreciate you taking the time, taking 30 plus minutes out your day to tuning in. If you know me, reach out to me, give me some feedback. I'm all about debates. I'm all about healthy debates, okay? So don't come to me with some unsensible anecdotes or opinions, right? Because I'm just ignore that, right? That's why I have TikTok to talk to talk crazy with some of these people. But this podcast, again, I want it to be engaging. So reach out to me. Let me know what your thoughts are. Tell me what other things you want to talk about. Okay. But thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Next week, I want to dive deeper into loving the process, even when progress feels invisible. Okay. Because I think that's a big thing that, the typical player goes through, right? If you're not a 5-star, 4-star, 3-star recruit, or if you have no stars, right? Like, it's going to be very hard for you to kind of be motivated, right? To keep going, to keep pushing yourself when you don't get that feedback, that positive feedback, right? So what does that process look like when everything else feels invisible? So I think next week, that's what we're going to dive into, right? And always remember, this is more than a game. Basketball is more than a game, but it's a great tool for life. And again, I appreciate you guys. This was It's More Than a Game podcast powered by Elite Fit Connect. Looking forward to talking with you next week. Peace.